What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another Game Time Discussions. I'm Emery Cuzzy. I'm sitting here with Cameron Selby, and we're going to be doing the Week 5 main core plays for the week. Got a few quarterbacks here that we're going to talk about. Got basically all levels of pricing, so lots of stuff to talk about. It's going to be a fun slate. There's a lot of really good plays, and there are some situations to monitor.
So it's an interesting slate in the regard that there's no true chalky value
Right
now. As of right now, I mean, obviously injuries can always happen, but there's good value quarterbacks all around. Running backs, there's a ton up top to love, and then basically there's not a single skill player above 8,000 on the slate, which you don't really see that often. So it's really easy to fit multiple studs
Right.
at multiple positions, and then obviously tight ends are underperforming, so nobody's over 6,000. And then defensive wise, there's nobody at the 4,000 mark because a lot of the defense that are up top have either underwhelmed or they're in kind of tough matchups or whatever. But it's very interesting. We'll get into it and see what we like. But a lot of directions you can go this week.
Yeah, and also I was going to say for all of this stuff, there's less games this week because of buys are starting to happen. Also, when we talk about, we're going to get into these games, but I also wanted you to tell us what the top 5 totals were and if there's any early weather concerns, but we don't have to get into the weather, I guess, yet. But yeah.
Yeah, so as far as I know, there's no major weather. Obviously, they're dealing with hurricanes on the East Coast and stuff like that. It was like a monsoon with the, monsoon, but it was a out of nowhere bad weather game for the Jets Broncos, which we weren't really targeting anyway, so it wasn't like the worst outcome for us. But in terms of the totals, Baltimore Cincinnati, my favorite game of the week. Highest total. I don't know if I would agree with it being the highest total, but very impactful game because both teams coming off wins. Baltimore trying to avoid going 2-3. Cincinnati trying to avoid going 1-4, and then dropping their first of two to Baltimore, the one that they should win. I think it's a pick 'em in my eyes, but with the things that we know where the ball is going in this game, and so that's why it's very interesting. And in terms of value, there's not really a ton to look at, but if you're trying to stack around either of these quarterbacks, like it's completely reasonable to be going those directions. Arizona San Fran, the second highest total. San Fran touchdown favorite. Basically, everybody's in a good spot. Arizona has been bad defensively. They got even worse, or performed even worse this past week, giving up 42 to Washington and 4 touchdowns on the ground. So a lot of good spots to look at on that regard. Rams and Packers is a very sneaky good one. 48 total. Christian Watson, not going to hit IR, but he is going to at least miss this week with an ankle sprain. So Green Bay's issue has always been there's 4 really quality receivers. I don't know who's going to get the big games. Well, he went out. Dontavian Wicks and Jaden Reed got all the love. Dobbs got targets, but was kind of so-so, but he still is worth a play. And then Tucker Kraft is just taken over as like the tight end one in that offense, and he had a really strong game playing catch-up last week. The Rams,
absolutely.
There's just value everywhere because the receivers are just moot, and Kyron Williams is one of the touch leaders once again, and he is the reason that they're in as many games as they have been. He's leading the league in touchdowns. He already has 6. So very strong play in that regard as well. Buffalo, Houston, another strong game to look at. Josh Allen, stackable, but it's more uncomfortable with the options that he has. And then with CJ Stroud, obviously Nico Collins, wide receiver 1 in terms of production, leading in yards and catches and scoring wise, end zone targets, all that stuff. He's been killing it this year. Stephon Diggs has been very reasonable as a wide receiver 2, which is what we thought would happen. Tank Dell has struggled. He missed last week. He should be back this week. And then Joe Mixon, he was really close to returning last week. He did not. But, Buffalo just gave up 200 yards to both Lamar and Derrick Henry. So they're dead last against running backs because of that skewed performance. He's walking back into a good matchup if he's healthy enough to do so. And then the last game of that highest total is Jacksonville-Indy. It's a good game environment to just kind of be contrarian. I think it'll probably have the lowest ownership of all these guys. In terms of Indy, it's kind of hard to trust Jonathan Taylor off of an ankle sprain, even if he does play. And then Michael Pittman, one of my favorite plays if Flacco is playing. But if he is not, which it seems like Anthony Richardson is going to be playing, then I just don't want to play him because you just see the splits between him playing with either Gardner last year or Joe Flacco now. Obviously, he was nothing the first 3 weeks, and then 110 yards as soon as Anthony Richardson goes out. So
Yep.
he is a good player that just doesn't have the right quarterback. And then on the Jacksonville side, they're the only 0-4 team. It is win or a lot of changes are going to happen. Good at game environment because back-to-back weeks, 360 yards to Caleb Williams, who really struggled through 2 weeks, and he just made a bunch of fantasy goodness happen. And then last week, obviously Justin Fields, who's not known throwing the ball a ton, over 300 yards through the air, multiple touchdowns on the ground. George Pickens killed it. Pat Freiermuth killed it. That's why we left Pittsburgh and why we were targeting them as stacks in our lineups this past week. And so obviously they're at home again. Trevor Lawrence, very reasonable price. And then he's really kind of just narrowed it down to he's thrown to these two guys.
Right.
And they're both under 6,000 still. So it's really easy to kind of get to that stack.
Yep. Then let me pull this up and we'll get talking about this slate. We'll talk about our favorite quarterbacks. We're going to start with studs. Our studs of the week are Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, both the two highest priced guys on the slate. Josh Allen going against the Houston Texans. When he has his boom games, he is a 30-plus guy, and his boom games mostly come in, I would say like either the blowouts or the closer games, but truly like he just whenever he wants to be good, he's good.
Right.
Like he just doesn't like there's no trend, but when he gets to go to, I guess actually I have one trend that is going to go against us a little bit, but when he's away from home, I don't know. Like he's just really good at football, man. When he's good, he's going to get you 30+ points.
Yeah. The differences this year between years past is like you needed to stack him before. Now he's just kind of evenly dispersing the ball.
Right.
He hasn't thrown for more than 30 times in a game this season. Obviously, he has a need to with some of the games when they were blowouts. But Dalton Kincaid has had so-so production, mainly because of bad game scripts, but he's their one consistent option. Khalil Shakir has basically caught 32 of his last 33 targets. So he's reliable in that guard, but there's negative regression coming from that. And he's also banged up. He was banged up last week with the ankle soreness. He's day-to-day. He should play, but now he's up to 5,900. It's kind of hard to have confidence in playing him.
Yeah,
There's so many other better options. And then Keon Coleman, he had a better game this past week. He basically was in trouble week 3 against Jacksonville. He didn't play the first 3 series because of team issues, but he caught his first touchdown. Then last week, 4 targets, but caught 3 of them for 51 yards. So he's good. He could have a breakout game. He still hasn't yet. But he's in play. Curtis Samuel kind of starting to ramp up a little bit more, and his price is dropping because he hasn't had his boom game also. But, I mean, he's kind of one of those similar Khalil Shakir-esque plays that we're waiting to see it. But it's kind of very tough to have much confidence in any of them. Even Dalton Kincaid, he's our favorite tight end, highest exposed, dom tight end or stud tight end in best ball, and he had less than 6 targets in each of the first 3 weeks because of blowouts or bad game scripts. And then last week, it got too much of a blowout.
Exactly.
But he was doing well, and, he hit the over like we knew he would. So if it's close, because we're just praying for a close game and a good environment for Buffalo, let's just play it. James Cook was a stud through 3 weeks and then had a pretty dudley game.
Yeah.
For obvious reasons this past week.
Yeah, I was actually going to say, I was going to ask you if you think if you're going to stack Josh Allen, could you put James Cook in a possible stack? I don't really think so, but it was just a question because he has had 5 targets in a game.
Sure.
I mean it's ugly.
The problem is he's my least favorite running back, 7,000 and above.
Fair enough. Absolutely. I completely agree.
And that's the only reason that I'd say no in that regard. But moving on to Baltimore in a similar regard, very uncomfortable with the pass catchers that is involved with him because, I mean, Zay Flowers, obvious wide receiver 1, but 20 yards the week before. Last week, we really liked him in the showdown or primetime slate. 1 catch, 10 yards. So pretty scary to invest in. But because of those poor performances, he's going to be lower owned, being 6,400. So very easy to get to. Rashad Bateman having the snaps. He caught a touchdown in week 3. Only had 1 target last week. Obviously, they were playing from ahead the whole game.
Yeah.
And the run game was working, and so that's what they kind of rode. Isaiah Likely hasn't really done much since his breakout game in week 1, but Mark Andrews isn't either. And
Yeah,
at this point,
hold on, just it gets worse.
Yeah, it gets worse. So, I mean, if you're gonna pick anybody like Lamar, you can unstack, you can single stack, you can double stack, you can go a lot of ways because he does so much with his legs. But again, Zay Flowers, he's waiting for the boom. The first 2 weeks, 10 targets, 11 targets. That was despite a bunch of targets going to him that were penalized and brought back.
It was crazy.
So the last 2 weeks, obviously they were up 3 touchdowns against Dallas, so didn't need to throw the ball. And then following week, Buffalo, there are 3 touchdowns, don't need to throw the ball.
Right.
And so because of those performances, I expect him to be under 10%. So you're going to be if we're going to play 5 lineups, he's going to be double the field for us just being in one. So I kind of like him from that regard because wide receiver is kind of very wide open this week. There's not a true stud. We usually kind of write down like up top who's one we wanted to get to. Last week we wanted to get to Nico, we wanted to get to Marvin, and we wanted to get to Rashee Rice. We were 2 for 2, and then Rashee Rice would have had a big game, but he was taken out by his own quarterback.
Yep.
So is what it is. I don't think that's the same case this week. I think you can live in the 6K and below range and just kind of spend up at top at running back. That's kind of initially how I'm looking to build. But yeah, that's kind of worth noting for those studs. Obviously, Derrick Henry's leading the league in yard. I'm sad that they didn't give him that 200 yard just because why not? But I mean, he looks the same, and obviously it's a bad call on our part for saying that he wasn't worth the second round billing. But I mean, he is what it is.
One thing I want to say about Baltimore in general, they throw the ball when they're down and they run the ball when they're up. And so when they're up, as they were against Dallas and Buffalo, they are running the ball and he's getting as many touches as he can. When they're down, though, he is not the same guy. Of course, he's falling into the end zone, but when he doesn't fall in the end zone,
and like even week 2 against the Raiders, he was a complete bust, and he had a big run in the second half to go, and then he fell into the end zone and salvaged his day with a respectable 16.6 points. But now he's the highest running back on the entire slate. Cincinnati, it's not a terrible matchup. It's a pretty decent matchup, but
if they're down, though, and Cincinnati finds a way to get up, because I think Cincinnati's good, and I think they can get up on a team like this who they play twice a year and are used to, he might not see the field as much as he wants to, and it might be this guy who also had a really big game this last game in 21.6 points out of Justice Hill, 6 for 6. He's the receiving back. So I think that it's interesting to talk about Justice Hill as possibly a stacking option with Lamar.
Yeah, definitely. And again, there's no obvious chalky running back that's cheap that we've seen in recent weeks, or receivers that are just minimum price that we're just going to click on and figure it out. It's just kind of interesting, and so I don't think many people are going to do that. So it's a viable way to go.
Yeah, Lamar is good at football, but we'll see what happens in the playoffs.
Exactly. So but going to our mid tier, it's going to be very interesting with the Green Bay Packers. Obviously, they were in a big hole, had to throw it a ton in Jordan Love's first game back. He threw for 360 plus. He's 6,500 in a good game environment. The Rams actually haven't been great defensively from either perspective, and Green Bay is a road favorite. And Jaden Reed with Jordan Love has over 138 yards in both games.
Yes.
2 touchdowns, should have been 3 in week 1.
Right.
And then last week, obviously, in catch up, 7 for 139 and touchdown. He is taking the leap into what we thought he would. He was a very serviceable, just kind of efficient, but not high volume guy. Mm-hmm. And then now it's like, oh, Jordan Love, like that's his guy. We have figured out like he is the wide receiver one in the offense, which is fun to see. He's my favorite receiver right now on the entire board.
I was going to say
because of his price, which I'm glad we're on the same page on. But obviously, weeks 2 and 3 you can throw out the window. Jordan Love didn't play. Also, we're playing from ahead in both games, so is what it was in that regard. But he also has rushing upside as well.
Yes.
Romeo Doubs, he had touches, opportunities. He was the one guy in this playing catch up with Minnesota that didn't really prosper, but that doesn't turn me away from him because he's going to be on the field a ton.
Yep, absolutely. I would actually let me get the next guy because he will be walking into a ton of snaps, and he had 13 targets.
13 targets.
That's a lot. That's a lot of targets.
A lot of targets. He's going to be one of the highest waiver wire priority pickups, tonight and going into Wednesday for fantasy teams galore. 2 touchdowns. He's got 3 through 4 games. Problem is that, or it's not even a problem, but he was, 0 goose egged week 1 against Philly, and that was in a game that Jordan Love played well, but also Christian Watson was heavily targeting that game, and so obviously he's going to be on the field more now that he will be in 3 receiver sets for certain for the majority part, and then 5,000 very reasonable to double stack whether you're doing Jaden Reed or if you just want to double mid tier with him and Romeo Dobbs at 54. And then, like I said, with tight ends, there's not really a ton to look at, but Tucker Kraft, he's really kind of taken over in terms of snap counts for Green Bay. But last week, 9 targets, 6 for 53 and a touchdown. He also caught a 2-point conversion. He also lost a fumble, though. But at the end of the day, he's been really well. He's been serviceable. He's having the breakout year that we thought Luke Musgrave would, and he's just getting more opportunities now. So very good cheap punt play as a secondary option for a stack.
Yeah, he was 86% snap count versus 33% for Luke Musgrave. So we were wrong on that one. I think everybody was, though. So I don't feel as bad.
He also didn't participate in the entire summer camp and stuff because he had a partially torn pec. So it's not really far-fetched that we were just like, oh, yeah, we don't think Tucker Kraft will just immediately come back and
be the guy.
And he played 96% of the snaps week 1. And we were like, oh, okay. So they really, really wanted him to be there, and it hasn't really changed since then. So then going to our other one.
Mid-tier.
We did gloss over Indy, but it is contingent primarily and solely on if Anthony Richardson is going to play or Joe Flacco. That doesn't mean if Anthony Richardson plays that he's not viable.
Right.
It's just a different way I'm going to stack that game, or I could just say Anthony Richardson's going to score 2 touchdowns and be annoying and just have
I actually
inefficiency, but kill it.
I think I take this stack. I have the Jacksonville stack up. If we're going to go with the Indy stack, I would take it off if Anthony Richardson starts. If Joe Flacco starts, it's a completely different story, though.
True.
I would want some Joe Flacco lines.
In
my personal opinion.
If Joe Flacco was in, we are 100% going to have a line or even 2 with him. But it just kind of makes it harder when Anthony Richardson is playing, just because he is bottom of the league in completion percentage, but highest in yards per attempt because he's had deep balls, and that's pretty much it. But it is worth noting Josh Downs had a great game with Joe Flacco under center, and then obviously Michael Pittman had his breakout game, like I mentioned previously. Alec Pierce also has been playing 80% of the snaps basically the entire season as well, so A.D. Mitchell is really just not getting involved. His snaps over the last 2 games actually went down compared to what he saw in the first 2 weeks when Josh Downs was out. So that's worth noting. But yeah, the team they're playing, though, Trevor Lawrence, 5,700. He has not had a great game yet. Has not been impressive. But guess what? Neither were Caleb Williams or neither was Justin Fields from a passing perspective.
Right.
When either of them played Indy, and then both of them just went off for over 300 yards, were very viable. Justin Fields was QB1 on the week, and then I don't remember what the total that Caleb Williams had, but he was high 20s, and obviously he had Cole Kmet 10 for 97, Rome Odunze over 110 yards, and then DJ Moore 8 for 78, I believe was his total, which was formidable, but you could have triple stacked that, and that would have been a home run as a tournament play. 23 points is what he ended up with.
But he went 363, so and 52 passing.
He had 3 turnovers, attempts, which is why he was under 25 points. So obviously, Indy is just giving up a ton. And if there is a breakout spot for Trevor Lawrence to get back to what we thought he could be, this is the time. And like I said, there's no Jordan Love Packers situation where you don't really know who's getting the ball. Lately, Christian Kirk, he struggled to start the year in terms of opportunities. 10 targets one game, 11 targets the other game. But, even Brian Thomas. But, yeah, like I said, 10 targets one game, 12 targets the next game, and he also scored plus 15 points in each of the last 2 weeks. And then Brian Thomas, everybody wants to talk about Malik Neighbors having a great start to his career, and Marvin Harrison. He has had a great start, and he's already the wide receiver 1 in that offense.
Yes.
Which is fun to see. He's had 9 targets back-to-back weeks, multiple end zone targets. He's getting end-around rushes. 3 of his 4 games, he's been over 10 or 11 fantasy points. Formidable 9-target game, 5 for 48 in a blowout loss to Buffalo. But both of them under 6,000, very easy to get to. And I don't even know how popular a double or even one of them as a standalone play would even be, just because their prices are starting to rise.
I also want to know what you think on the. I want to know the ownership for Trevor Lawrence too, because I think it'll be lower than most of the guys just because he hasn't played well. And maybe it's almost like how we write off Kyle Pitts. Like sooner or later, they're going to start writing off Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, and then there's other guys that are in that range. I mean, you don't even have to scroll up to see. You saw Geno Smith have 400 total yards on Monday Night Football.
Right.
Caleb Williams has had back-to-back good, solid performances. Tyler Huntley obviously is going to be scratched off, but Matthew Stafford home against Green Bay. Green Bay has been kind of porous.
Right.
And then Joe Flacco, if he is playing, he is going to be one of our favorite plays and values on the slate and double stacks and all that good stuff. Andy Dalton is still not over 55, and he's had back-to-back good weeks. Another revenge spot.
Right.
So even though Trevor's in a good spot, because he has not performed yet, people's recency bias is probably going to keep his ownership lower than it should be.
Exactly. Evan Ingram, we are hoping will be back this week. He has been ruled out against the Texans. That was last week. Okay, I was like, I was just making sure. Hopefully he'll be back this week with this hamstring injury. If
he isn't, Brendan Strange at 3,200, it just opens up another value if you wanted to go that route. Basically, last week was his first game that he didn't play well of the three, but other than like the previous two games, he had 6 targets, 5 targets. For somebody 3,200 worth the flyer won't be that popular.
Right, exactly.
That's just kind of one of the things when you have a tight end slate that there's not really a concrete option that you just are in love with.
Well, here we go. You ready? Ready, everybody? It's puke. Cam's favorite puke of the week.
We've been killing pukes.
We have
so far.
We
honestly,
have killed some pukes.
I think 3 straight weeks now we've correctly called out a puke stack.
Yeah.
And this week is very pukey.
Yep.
However, it's Cleveland versus Washington. And Washington, obviously, they've had multiple instances of giving up over 300 passing yards, multiple passing touchdowns. I don't even know what Arizona was doing last week to only score 14 points and 7 after the first 5 minutes of the game.
No, I know.
Don't know what happened there. Obviously, we loved Kyler in that spot. But Deshaun, again, less than 200 yards each week. He hasn't had a boom game other than, I guess, the Giants at 18 points. If you were at this price, it would be even better. But he's the cheapest he's been all year. It's in a good game environment. I actually could be even picking Cleveland outright to win this game, just because.
Not against that.
Because I know they're a dog, but Washington's red and high. It's the public. They're up to, I think they're juiced to 4 now, -4.
Pretty high.
It's pretty high for a team that I think is very evenly matched, and I just think Washington is just riding high. But guess what? Buffalo was riding high, and look what happened to them this past week. Deshaun, the problem is that he and Amari Cooper just have never been able to get on sync. Obviously, through this season, Amari Cooper, other than the 2 touchdown game against the Giants, has really struggled from a fantasy perspective. Weeks 1 and 2, he had 8 targets, 9 targets, less than 4 receptions both games. Very terrible. And then last week, 4 for 35, frustrating. But there was also an 82-yard touchdown that was called back to a kind of...
Yeah, I don't think it was a hold.
Yeah, sketchy hold. Doesn't matter. So if he catches that, hypothetically, he's 5 for 119 and 3 touchdowns through 2 weeks. 6,200. Again, I think you can live in the 6K range with receivers this week. If you're puking him, from Deshaun's perspective, like, I think doing him and Jerry Jeudy.
Yeah, Jerry Judy's been really good.
Slow and steady, just consistently 11, 12. 7 targets. He only had 4 for 27 against the Giants, but then 13 last week. He's getting consistent targets.
He just needs the touchdowns.
5,200.
You know, that's the biggest thing. If he gets a touchdown, he's very, very viable. He get 18 points.
Yeah, exactly.
That's super viable.
David Njoku.
Yeah, let me grab him.
So on if he'll be back this week. Not exactly certain, but if he is, he's always a good wide receiver play, and he actually had the best chemistry with Deshaun of any of the skill players so far. He was having a pretty solid game before he did go down with a sprained ankle. And then also another thing worth noting is Nick Chubb. They're opening the practice window for him. He's probably going to practice this week. I would assume they hold him out one more week.
Yes.
And if he does, then that opens the door for Jerome Ford. But if Chubb does play, it's going to be hard to trust either running back from a volume perspective, or even being fantasy relevant for being 5,800. So this is the puke of the week, and it feels uncomfortable, but it's a great spot. to kind of break out. And like I said,
Right.
I think there's a legit shot that Cleveland wins this game outright. And if they do, it's going to be because of scoring over 20 points.
Well, I also say it's interesting to talk about the 7 targets for Jerome Ford because that makes him a very viable option to stack with, and it will not be done. No one else will have Jerome Ford, Deshaun Watson, and Amari Cooper, or Jerry Jeudy if you don't believe in Amari Cooper. So I think that's interesting too. But let's go talk about the fun part of this slate, not the puke. Oh, it's still there. No, go away. There we go. Talking about how we're going to kind of look at running backs this week is I definitely think it's interesting because I am with you on the fact that I don't really love a ton of running backs that are not studs. Yeah, definitely not studs. Even medium, middle.
You look at every single one. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey's on IR still, but his replacement, Jordan Mason, might be in the best spot in the entire weekend.
Yes.
Like I said, the Cardinals just gave up 4 rushing touchdowns this past weekend to Brian Robinson, Jeremy McNichols, and Jaden Daniels, and so he's in a fantastic spot. He's finally 7,400. His ownership's still going to be there because he's been killing it like he has, but great spot there. Derrick Henry leading the league in rushing. It's completely in the realm of possibilities. He has another good 100-yard game. Kyron Williams, fantastic spot in my opinion against Green Bay.
Yes,
with the exception of Tennessee having a very poor day on the ground when they were trailing early and often. They have basically been very susceptible to running backs. Aaron Jones in a revenge spot. He had over 110 all-purpose yards. He just didn't score. Obviously, Saquon Barkley had his 3-touchdown debut against Green Bay. And then week 2, Jonathan Taylor, they were trailing the entire game. He had 10 yards a touch, over 130 all-purpose yards.
Yep.
Kyron Williams is one of the only running backs in the entire league playing over 90% of the snaps. Blake Corum's a non-factor. Kyron leading the league in touchdowns.
Yeah.
And if he's going to get, 23 opportunities a game, he is going to be in my lineups, and I'm probably going to be able to get him.
26 the week before.
Yeah, he's a clear 5-box running back if they were favored, but they're actually dogs at home this week. But really like him. Von Achane, we talked about Jordan Mason just being very good in a good spot. Devon Achane, hard to trust him back-to-back weeks. Very inefficient without Tua.
Yeah.
I said really hard to trust, but he could break one at any time.
Yeah.
But also Raheem Mostert's going to be back. But also it's New England. But also this. But also that. He's probably one of my least favorite of all these guys. If you're going to spend up, I also mentioned James Cook earlier. But Joe Mixon, if he's back, look what Derrick Henry and Lamar as a combination, and Justice Hill for that matter, did to Buffalo.
Right.
Joe Mixon, if he's back, I don't expect him to be limited to like just 10 touches to where he won't pay off his price tag. So he's in a great spot. The next guy, Kenneth Walker.
Stud. Absolutely.
Obviously, we didn't play him, and it wasn't because of his oblique. I wasn't concerned about him, just not getting many opportunities.
Which he didn't.
Because, he had 17 opportunities, which is kind of typically what he hovers around. But it was mainly because Detroit's just number 1 against running backs. They have for about a year and a half now. And that did not freaking matter against Kenneth Walker, who was doing parkour.
Yeah, that was funny. That was hilarious.
Scoring 3 touchdowns on the ground. Obviously, he scored 4 in the 2 games he's played. They're a 6-point favorite at home. 5-box running back. He's 6,800. Love him this week.
Yep, absolutely.
Great spot for him as well. And like I said, there's just so many of these guys. It's hard to even rank the 5 or 6 we mentioned, other than I guess you can odd man out James Cook and Devon Achane.
Right.
But all of those guys, if you want to play them and that's your favorite, completely fine with it.
Absolutely agree. I think moving to the mid-tier, the next guy we're going to talk about is Josh Jacobs, and that's just because the Rams are porous. But he had crazy opportunities when in this first game against Indy, they told us he was going to get those opportunities. He has not scored enough touchdowns, as you can see up here, for him to be worth the price.
Fat zero. He just hasn't had his boom game yet.
Yeah.
He's had the volume. Obviously, Marshawn Lloyd's still on IR.
Mm-hmm.
He's really just kind of competing with himself, and it's just game environment. Tennessee struggled, but Tennessee's good against the run.
Yeah.
And then with Minnesota, obviously they were trailing 28-0. So that is not going to help his cause if you paid up for him. But it was pleasant to see that he got 6 targets in
absolutely.
In that playing catch up. But they are favored. So he would be the 5 box running back if they were at home. So
Yeah.
basically, he and Kyron in that game for the 5 boxes checked. You want to play both of them? I don't give a damn because they're both in good spots.
Completely agree. And then the next guy on our list will be Chuba Hubbard because he is just doing the right things every week. He has over 100 yards in the last 2 games. He's got 22 plus opportunities, a touchdown in the last game, in both the last 2 games. Like, he's just been really good.
Yeah, he's exactly what we thought he would be. But the first 2 games, obviously, they're down 47-10 to New Orleans, and then the Chargers, it was never close. And so even the Chargers, he was efficient with his touches. He just didn't get enough. But then he's ahead the whole game against the Raiders, and obviously gets 160 yards to show for it. Cincinnati, they played him close. So he was at home and able to, get the 22 opportunities. So if he's able to get 20 opportunities against Chicago's much worse against the run than they are the pass. It's another week for now. If Jonathan Brooks stays out, he's just going to be another workhorse. Yeah,
I will say also he did jump up in snap count percent. He went from 58% to 74%, which is 58% was his recent highest. Now it's 74%. So yeah, he's definitely in play. The next guy is right underneath him. Where
it's going to be uncomfortable to say because of the last 2 weeks. Obviously, he had a very good start to the year. He was either in a sell high spot or just New England's not going to be favored much or not going to be playing from ahead. So he was the first 2 weeks and he got the opportunities to show for it. Well, the Jets, they were behind way early and he had an awful game. Obviously 1.3 points is not what you want when you're spending 11,400 on a showdown. And then last week was kind of more of the same where he had a much better performance, but is against the 49ers on the road. They're down trailing 3 scores. Well, they're favored against Miami this week. And you saw what Tajay Spears and Tony Pollard just did 2 nights ago on Monday against them. And so very solid spot. They're favored, 20 touch upside. He's kind of right there. And he might be one of the lower owned of all these kind of 5 box potential running backs just because recency bias. He sucked recently.
Yes.
Well, guess what? Football, you got to just kind of have a short-term memory with certain guys.
Yeah, and he probably will have more opportunities than what he's showing here in a game that's closer. These games, of course, they're down early. Like you said. The games that they're close in, he's getting 27 touches. So
exactly.
It makes sense. The next guy on the list we're going to talk about in the last guy on our mid-tier list is going to be DeAndre Swift. He finally did something, which was great to see for him, but we didn't play him this week after we had played him in prior weeks.
We played Roschon because Roschon was apparently going to get more touches, which he scored the first touchdown. So we were like, oh, yeah,
we're
our
excited.
Boy Roschon. But DeAndre Swift was finally efficient with his touches. Look at week 1, 3 yards a carry, then 1.3 yards a carry, and then 1.5 yards a carry. But then he had his breakaway, touchdown run and was very efficient through the pass game. And he's shown this upside before, but the consistency has not been there. But Carolina, one of the worst in the NFL against the run, and they've lost their leading tacklers, their best defensive linemen. It's a great spot. But is he going to continue the consistency? I'm very intrigued by what his ownership is going to be because he had 3 awful games and then a huge boom game.
Right.
So because he's very affordable still, is he going to go there? Should we buy one more week of Roschon while he's still under 5,000?
Yeah, I was going to ask.
Very interesting to see.
Yeah, I think the Roschon is going to be interesting because I think he could get. Why can't he get 12 snaps? Also, I don't expect DeAndre Swift to get the bulk of the rushing opportunities. Like in general, I feel like he's.
Yeah, they were just kind of high-handing it.
Yeah, and he was doing well. So I don't know that it stays that way.
But yeah, and then back-to-back weeks for Roschon that he got 37% of the snaps. Obviously, DeAndre Swift got 63, but really they've kind of phased out Khalil Herbert. And so if Roschon is the 1B and, he's efficient enough to get kind of some targets as well, he's still another value this week. And because he rose $800 and he didn't really have a boom game, he just kind of salvaged with the touchdown. I don't know if many people are going to play him. He's going to be we called him out at 1% for being 4,100 and it worked out. Well, he's 4,900. He'll probably still be a similar ownership of like 2-3%, but it's also a great matchup.
Right.
And if he's the goal line back, he could fall into the end zone again and hit value from there. And then everything else is just, extra candy from there.
For sure. From the wide receiver position, we'll talk about some guys quickly. Jamar Chase is going to be a guy we'll talk about because he's going up against Baltimore. Baltimore has given up some plays to some wide receivers. Jamar Chase is good against everybody, so has the opportunity to get way more targets than this. I don't know what's going on. He needs 11 targets every game.
Exactly. I don't know what happened the first. Obviously, with Washington, he was very efficient with his targets, and we called out his boom game, and he worked out. It was awesome. Last week, he had one of the more impressive, catch and runs that I've seen in some time.
Yeah, it was good.
It was a very impressive run. If you haven't seen it, go check that out. But he did good. T. Higgins had his first, solid game of the season. And he's only 6,000 as well. But Jamar Chase is the highest skill player on the slate. There's a lack of options up top, like I mentioned previously. So there's no, Justin Jefferson's on the slate. There's no this, that, and the other. And so with that being said, he's really the only true alpha receiver, but he hasn't been getting the alpha target share yet. Can it happen this game? Sure. It is the highest total on the slate. So if you're going to do any kind of Baltimore or Cincinnati build, he is in the play. I don't know if it's a priority, and I don't know if he's going to be a thumbnail like, one would hope for somebody being an alpha and trying to prioritize.
Right, of course. I do want to talk about we're not getting to Nico this week, unfortunately. He is not on my list, and that makes me sad. It makes me sad because I want to play Nico as much as possible.
Same with Tyreek.
Yeah,
it's tough.
Can't do it. Marvin Harrison is going to be a guy on our list. He is going to be part of the second highest total on the week in the Arizona versus San Francisco game. Obviously, more on the San Francisco side. But if you're going to play Jordan Mason, he would be a great bring back in his own right.
Yeah, he scored in 3 straight games. He's been efficient. I don't know, again, what the hell happened with Washington. That was just a weird game plan. We've been annoyed at their play calling and scheme all season long, but he has performed in spite of it, other than week 1, obviously. So he's in play. And again, because he didn't have the extremely high volume game or opportunities, that he's same 7,500 again, and he's been basically there all season. And so I think his ownership is just going to stay lower, which is why he's a good tournament play. And
then we got to talk about Malik Neighbors, who had 15 targets, I believe, last week. He's got
Look at those targets, man.
I mean,
18, 12, 15. He was concussed last week late in the game, but he had an extra 3 days to rest, so we expect him to play. Seattle just gave up a big game to Amon-Ra St. Brown, and then obviously a long touchdown to Jameson Williams. Malik Neighbors is in play because he's 7,300 and he's getting like $9,000 workload.
Yes, and if he doesn't play, Wan'Dale Robinson will be in play because he got 14 targets. So yeah, both of those guys in play, just depending on what happens.
Again, easy bringbacks for somebody like Kenneth Walker if you're going to go that way, or even playing the passing game. Who Gino, like I said, we didn't mention from a stacking perspective, but he just had a 400-yard game, all-purpose yards.
Right. The next guy is Deebo Samuel. He, of course, came back from his injury last week, and he wasn't necessarily efficient, but this is a week where now he should be efficient, better off. And if you do not want to be playing the Jordan Mason side, I think that Deebo is the best option otherwise.
I don't get why his price dropped. I know he had an okay game, and he didn't get a ton of looks. He had 7 opportunities and 72 yards, so it wasn't amazing, but they were also ahead the whole game, and he just wasn't the one that scored. But I mean, yeah, he had 19 the first game, 21 the second game. Didn't score that time though. But 6,800, like one of the highest totals on the slate.
A little cheap.
If you don't want to get to Jordan Mason, because we are going to play him a ton again,
right?
But we're not going to play him in every line. Again, you can live in that 6K range this week at receiver.
Yep. And then talking about going down to the true 6K mid-tier guys. Our favorite player we talked about is Jaden Reed. We both feel that way. Amari Cooper we talked about a little bit when we talked. Zay Flowers in this range.
Deontay Johnson.
That was one we were going to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, look at his target share. He had,
he is him.
14 and 13 targets with Andy Dalton. So over 20 points in each game, scored in each game. He's just the only guy. The only thing is, Jalen Johnson's one of the best corners in football.
Yes.
I don't know how much that'll impact him because he kind of moves all around. But another game where they should be trailing again and throwing a ton, and so he's in play for 6,100 if I'm going to get 10 to 12 targets.
Yeah, absolutely. All day long for that. And then T. Higgins, like you said earlier with Jamar Chase, both of those guys are in play. Michael Pittman is in play if we
If
get
Flacco's playing, but
Flacco.
I mean, look at all the 6K receivers we rattled off, about
Yeah.
6-7 names. So that's why we're not really getting up top that much this week for the receiver position. We mentioned the Jacksonville receivers in the high 5K range earlier, but then after that, it's really kind of thin down here.
Oh yeah, through here it's really gross, kind of. I mean, Tank Dell at 5,400 is interesting. You're going to get Romeo Dobbs if you're going to play Jaden Daniels. Jordan Love a little bit. You get Jared Judy if you play Deshaun.
Josh Downs if Joe Flacco's in.
Perfect.
Dontavian Wicks as a secondary stack.
Mm-hmm.
But then going really low, it's just like it's dart throws. I mean, Demario Douglas obviously had a breakout game for us finally in the showdown a couple of weeks ago. But other than that, he's been a dud. So not really a ton of confidence, but you got to play somebody.
I know who to
Trey
play.
Tucker.
I know who to play.
Is the one guy because
come on,
Devontae Adams hamstring/trade request probably has played his last down with the Las Vegas Raiders. Yeah. Trey Tucker was the guy that took advantage of that with 7 opportunities. He had 41 yards receiving. He also had a rushing touchdown. But then the week before, obviously, he scored as well on 9 targets, 96 yards. He's played very well. He's with more opportunities.
Yeah, I was gonna say he might get the Patrick Surtain look because he plays on the outside mostly. Jacoby Meyer also plays in the slot. That might be an option. If you want to go that way, Brock Bowers is always an option. Don't mind me.
Right.
But yeah, let's start making some lines. I know which quarterback is my favorite, but I want to hear your thoughts. Maybe we should make a stud line to start off.
Okay. I'm actually interested to see. I'll let you select the quarterback because I'm interested to see who your favorite one is.
Up top, my stud quarterback will be Lamar Jackson.
Okay.
Because I want to get some Jamar Chase.
All right. Well, that's going to make this
very, very difficult. Yes, but we're not going to go to running backs for them. We're going to go to wide receiver.
Okay, so we're going to get Zay Flowers.
Yeah.
And that's all I really want to play if we're doing a Lamar stack.
Perfect. I'm going to grab Chase because I said I was going to do it.
That's going to make it very tough.
Running back is definitely a spot that we're going to because there's just not that many.
Well, let's go a cheap defense and tight end so we can try to see what we can afford.
Perfect.
We didn't go over any of these names. I think Houston was like the lowest that I was willing to go because they're, at home. And I mean, obviously Buffalo is kind of volatile. We saw, them be held at 10 points this past week. Could see a similar thing. I don't know. But do you have a defense that you prefer in the 2K range?
If we're both picking Cleveland to win against Washington, that's where I wanted to go.
Okay.
And I thought that was
I think nobody's going to play them because obviously they're coming off of 2 40-point games.
I thought it was an interesting spot for sure. What game do you want to attack for our tight end then? Tucker Kraft is an option. I wanted to make this one a little difficult, and then we'll go to the easier one in a second.
Right.
I mean, there's definitely an easy route, and we'll talk about it. Brenton Strange, Jordan Akins, Eric All Jr. is 2,700. How did he?
That would have been a fun bring back.
Yeah,
because he's guaranteed to catch 4 passes apparently now. From henceforth.
And maybe he'll fall in the end zone, right?
Hopefully. I would say probably the safest one is Tucker Kraft.
Okay, let's do it. 3,500.
Problem is just like getting him and a Jaden Reed would be weird, but 5,400, man, we're gonna have to work.
Oh yeah, try to figure out a running back. Maybe it's a Roshan build. I know which wide receiver I will add at 4,100 to give us some love and some value.
That helps a little bit.
Yeah. Let's go check out some running backs because we're gonna have to get one of the probably upper echelon guys, or I mean, Kenneth Walker's the guy that I would probably
go with Kenneth Walker.
That is not okay. I did it right. 5,500 for 2 players. I made this one difficult. I enjoy it though. It's gonna be weird.
So the easiest thing I can think of is going with like a Ramondre.
Yeah.
And then if you went there, then that's enough for Dontavian Wicks.
Oh yeah.
But the thing is, you'll be playing 2 Packers without correlation to the Rams.
Mm-hmm. What if I went to Roshan? What is
61?
And I could go Deontay. I could
Well,
go
yeah, Deontay would be the
Chuba.
correlation
Yeah.
because you just played, and obviously we didn't talk contrarian games, but the Chicago and Carolina game is the one that was
One
first
of
up
our
on our list.
contrarians, yeah.
So yeah,
I think it's interesting.
yeah, it's a unique build.
I can tell that it's going to be really hard to get up to the expensive quarterbacks.
Right.
And also
it's not my favorite just
Jamar
for the
Chase.
reason of how uncomfortable you got to get.
Yeah.
But like I said, receiver wise, that kind of bring back with a Lamar stack might be the only way I might be even getting that high. Just because I think we're gonna live in the balanced build territory this week.
Yeah, I agree. So now let's go balanced. I know what quarterback you're probably going to say to me, so let's hear it. Oh, I don't know. Do I? Let's hear it. Nope.
Let's start with Jordan Love.
Okay. I think that's where I would start.
And then we're going to go Jaden Reed. And then put Tucker Kraft back in there.
All right, Tucker Kraft is our second.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then we're going to correlate this, and we're going to put in Mr. Kyron Williams, the 4.5 Fox running back himself.
Yeah, right. Okay.
All right.
Good start. Got some extra money.
Got some extra money. Let's go plug a cheap defense in. I don't mind New England based on what we saw from there. And then also if we wanted like a Ramondre Love, we could go that direction.
Yeah.
Don't have to though.
Kenneth Walker, Jordan Mason. I think those guys are very viable.
Yeah, I really am going to be intrigued by doing like 3 stud running backs this week. So that's what I kind of want to try with this build. So let's put in Walker and Jordan Mason.
Okay.
And see what we can kind of weasel around.
Okay, we got 4,100 for.
It's not enough for him to weasel.
Trey Tucker. No, it's very uncomfortable. But
okay.
Keon Coleman. I thought Josh Downs was down here somewhere. He is not. Where is he? He's much higher than I thought. There he is. He's at 5,100. Okay.
Okay, so maybe in this build, let's take out a Jordan Mason.
Okay.
Fortunately,
Jordan Mason out.
We love you. And let's put in Ramondre to correlate with the Patriots defense. Okay. I think he'll be low owned in a really strong tournament play as a running back. That leaves 6,100, so that brings you back up to Deontay Johnson, which is fun. If you wanted to go even cheaper at running back, I'm sorry, at defense, then that opens up even Amari Cooper, who should be lower owned as well.
Right.
We're definitely going to want some Zay Flowers at some point. And then, we just did.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think this is a solid build. It's balanced. There's no one that we're really taking a risk on. So I think in that regard, it's a pretty solid, I would say cash build, but Ramondre I just know is going to be so low owned and stuff like that. But
who's in that range that we could get instead?
Let's pretend that Joe Flacco is playing and go Michael Pittman. Then that would be the cash build.
Right. For sure. Completely agree with that.
A lot of good names and fun stuff like that. Fun times.
All right, let's build one more. Do you want to go complete puke with Deshaun Watson, or do you want to do a Trevor Lawrence build? Or do you want to pick somebody else? That's fine too. I'm okay with that.
Let's go with
Joe Flacco's an option.
Let's go with a Trevor Lawrence build with the intention that Flacco is going to play. So obviously that would mean our bring back it makes us feel better about it. So we'll go Trevor 57. I want both of them.
Okay, and Michael Pittman.
Mm-hmm.
That one and 57. Christian Kirk.
Yeah, and then if we need to make some room, then I don't mind going down 900, say, for some Josh Downs.
Fair enough. Now we're gonna obviously be playing some studs because this lineup allows that.
Yeah, put in Jordan Mason since we left him out. Obviously, you got to play some of him this week.
Can we get all 3? No, we don't have enough money, do we? Maybe it's tight end and defense. That seems like a lot, though. Like they're doing this.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't think so. Cameron.
No.
Too low. Do you want to play Kenneth Walker or you want someone else?
Well, I mean, we put him in the first two, so we can leave him out on this one.
Okay.
Let's go with Josh Jacobs.
Okay.
As a play.
Not against it. Against the Rams.
Now we gotta get a little tough. Defensive wise, again, not a ton, like a strong lean, but somebody in the 2K range. There's a few that I like, so just kind of go. I think select one.
My favorite that we talked about
Denver's
is
another option because they've been playing well.
Yeah,
but Patriots, like I said, home favorite against the Miami Dolphins, who just couldn't do anything against the Titans.
And then, do you have a lean at tight end that you want to get to make this very pretty line? Let's see. Evan Ingram, likely. Do we want to pay up? Because we can still go Trey McBride.
Hypothetically, we love Trey Tucker still.
Yeah, that's what I was going
to say. You can afford him all the way if you want to go that high.
Yeah.
Or if you didn't, Brock Bowers, 55, still fine with that. Dalton Kincaid in the player pool as well. The only problem is just there's not a lot of options in the 4K range for receiver this week.
Yeah.
So that's why it's kind of like you either go all the way up or all the way down at tight end when you're thinking of last guy in. If we went with another like low threes guy, I don't even know if we need to go down to
Eric All.
Yeah, Eric All. But let's pretend that I don't know.
Can't play Brenton Strange unless you want to triple stack this line.
Don't want to triple.
Tucker Kraft is still an option. You'd have 6,500. That gives you Zay.
I mean,
that gives you.
Yeah, go put in Tucker Kraft. I know we're not going to play 100% of him, but he's the easiest one to make it work now.
2 Green Bay players, though. That was the only thing I was worried about.
Oh, that's true.
So,
okay, take
now
him
that
out.
I look at it, yeah.
And let's go with
Jordan Akins, if we think Njoku's out. We can go all the way down to 2,700 in Eric All.
Okay.
Let's try it. 7,300 is Neighbors. Wow. Sure. Yeah. Okay.
Fine.
Neighbors. You could also just shove in some other stud running backs. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I don't hate it. I like it.
Don't hate it. There's a lot of ways to go this week. Just because there's a lot of good solid plays in the mid range. There's no immediate up top stud that's overly expensive. I'm very intrigued to see what the ownership will be through most of these guys. But yeah, I mean, that's a good first start to the contest, and we'll just kind of see how it plays out throughout the week.
Yeah. So that was our first look at the main core plays. We don't just play main, though. We play everything. We play every lineup possible because you never know when you're going to hit in a odd lineup, prime time. You can play. Obviously, we play Monday Night Football Showdown, Sunday night, and Thursday Night Football. We play early only, afternoon. We do it all. And if you want all of those, you have to be in our Discord because otherwise you will not see them. I mean, we do our live stream, but we can critique our own lineups right before lock. And so we send those into our Discord. So if you haven't been in our Discord, please join. It's going to be in the description.
Yeah, we appreciate you guys tuning in. Again, we do it every Sunday morning from 8:30 to about 11. This week, we're going to be live streaming during the London game. So we'll be keeping up with that as we're, building some fun lines and talking about things and seeing what craziness we can do. But we hope you guys tune in. It's going to be a lot of fun. We've been having a ton of fun doing it, getting better and better covering this sport and DFS-wise. Can't thank you enough for the continuing support and growth that this community has done. We just ask for more support, or not more support, but more interaction.
Yes.
Again, this is a community. This is we tell you what to do, and then you follow suit. This is we're building lines, community builds. That's what we want to be about. So we want you guys to tune in and interact with us for that. But we will see y'all Sunday, and until then, have a good one.
Yeah, one thing before we go. Sorry, I did want to say, if you want our lines for the Sunday morning game, you're going to have to be in the Discord because we will not be posting them anywhere else. So if you want those lines, you have to be in the Discord with us. But otherwise, we appreciate you. As Cam said, please like, comment, subscribe, and we will see y'all next time.